We come this week to the second to last Parsha, Torah portion of the book of Vayikra, of Leviticus. So here we are, still at Mount Sinai, but Moses is back down at the base now, continuing to receive divine inspiration for commandments to give to the people before they continue on their way, wandering in the wilderness on the way to the promised land. And here in this week's Parsha, we come to one of several moments in the Torah where God gives Moses, a rundown of the calendar holidays to give to the children of Israel as their new set of holidays for their new life as a free people, to be living free from slavery in the promised land. And there's a number of these rundowns of the calendar throughout the Torah, but they're all phrased a little bit differently. And we always learn something from the specific ways that it's given a little bit of a twist this time. The twists always show us something about how we can really live the best lives we can, how we can not only observe holidays to the fullest, but also but also sense what is asked of us by God and also love each other to the fullest. So we come in particular this week to a really evocative, poetic way that God describes Yom Kippur. And so I invite you to turn with me to page 4 in our handouts. We're going to look at these verses on a number of different levels, including the level of, why are we reading this passage now? Doesn't Yom Kippur come in the fall? I mean, it's May. What are we doing? Now, of course, the most literal answer to that question is that given the cycle of reading each parsha each week, starting after the High Holy Days, starting after the fall holidays in the fall, this is simply the moment when we get to this part of the book of Vayikra in May. You know, if we started a weekly portion cycle of reading portions of American history every fall, we would probably get to, the actual moment of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. We probably wouldn't get to that actually in July. We'd probably get to that story around November or December. It's pretty early in American history, right? We'd probably get to that story pretty early in November or December, even though the holiday of 4th of July is actually in July. That's kind of the idea. We get to this part of the Torah now, even though it's talking about a holiday that actually comes at a different time in the year. That's kind of the most surface, sort of straightforward answer. I think, though, our tradition is showing us something deeper by having us read this passage at this moment in the year. But we'll come back to that in just a second. Let's start with these verses themselves. Here we are, page 4 in the handout. God has just described to Moshe Rosh Hashanah as a day of Zichron Truah, shofar blasts, a day of blasts, just like on Rosh Hashanah, Truah, right? So God's described Rosh Hashanah, great celebration, and now we have this fascinating passage here. And Adonai spoke to Moshe, saying, Yet, on the 10th of this 7th month, that's counting from the political new year of the kingdom of ancient Israel, beginning in the month of Nisan, right, is the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur. A sacred convocation shall be for you, and you shall afflict your souls, the initem nafshotechem, also means deprive your throats, i.e. fasting, and bring forth a fire offering to Adonai, and no task, that is to say work, business as usual, shall you do on this very day, the etzem hayom hazeh, literally in the bone of the day. Etzem means bone. For it is a day of atonement, to atone for you before Adonai, your God. A Sabbath of Sabbaths, Shabbat Shabbaton, it is for you, and you shall afflict your souls on the 9th of the month in the evening, from evening to evening, you shall keep your Sabbath. So, what a fascinating set of ways to describe this holiday. First of all, what's with this yet, this ach? It's a very unusual way to, if you were going through a calendar in your own family, let's say, oh, well, we got New Year's and then Valentine's Day, yet it is your grandfather's birthday in March, right? If your parents said that, they'd be really trying to tell you something. That's a very evocative, powerful way to say it, right? And then we have this beautiful image, this very day, literally in the bone of the day. It's a very poetic way to describe a day. You wouldn't just say that about, a time you went to Starbucks. And then finally, Shabbat Shabbaton, a Sabbath of Sabbaths. So why all this emphasis Why these poetic synonyms, this beautiful evocative language? Truly, Shakespeare could have done no better to describe a holiday. I think that what we see here is that one of the great roles of Judaism and all religion is to get us to pay attention. We as Homo sapiens get so easily distracted, and arguably that's not bad or good, it just is. We get so easily distracted, our lives are full of to-do lists, buzzes in our pockets, beeps coming from our pockets, all manner of things. We got work to do during the week, we got shopping lists, there's important, meaningful work we do during the week too. There are things that are not easy in our lives, in our society, in our world, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we get so easily distracted. And when we get distracted, we run the risk of tuning out of things and letting things slip through our fingers and kind of fogging out. And we're talking now about Yom Kippur, right? We're talking about atonement. We're talking about apology. We're talking about forgiveness. And I think that there's such a risk in the human condition that we can just kind of fog out and say, oh, well, how bad could something really be? How high could the stakes really be? Or, we're so caught up in routine that something kind of slips our minds. We just want to get used to the way things are, and could things be different? Well, we don't really think about it. We've all been there in one way or another. And I think that this poetic language is God's way of saying to us, this is serious business. This is high stakes. This matters. Apology and forgiveness, doing right by each other, restoring relationships, healing, connection, accountability, and the chance to love each other better. This is serious business. And the fact that we have the chance for clean slates, the fact that we have the chance for healing, for love, this is also very good news. There's a very sunny element to the chance for a clean slate and the chance for healing and for loving each other better. But only if we really put our hearts into it. Only if we really do it to the fullest. Only if we realize how high stakes it is and how much it matters. And we actually hear this in the trump, the cancellation, the way that the Torah is chanted. If you look with me here, I'm actually chanting these verses tomorrow morning in the Shabbat morning service. So I've been thinking about these verses all week on multiple levels. And if you look with me here in the Hebrew with the small markings above and below the big block consonants, the markings that indicate the trump, the cancellation, you'll see here that the most frequently appearing trump marks and swatches of melody in Torah cancellations are things like this. Ba 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 ba. Ba, 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 ba. And you can hear how this melody kind of moves you along in storytelling. But then for really special moments, our ancestors put swatches of melody on the words to really bring it to the fore. Just like in a great musical. Leonard Bernstein and Stephen Sondheim did that for West Side Story too, right? There's a reason they saved the music of Maria for saying her name. They didn't use that for, I'm hungry. That wouldn't really match, right? So look with me here on the page, okay? Vayiraber Adonai Moshe Emor. That's, and Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, right? Pretty straightforward. Now listen to the trump mark for ach, for yet. Ach, be'esor lachodesh hashvi'i hazeh. And then it goes on from there. But so you hear on the yet, they put this beautiful, beautiful trump mark. It kind of is like Maria. There's a whole slew of notes up and down on that one word. So they're really trying to use the melody of it to emphasize the poetry of it, all of which is emphasizing the spirit of it. That the Torah is getting our attention and helping us to wake ourselves up. Why would you say yet before you explain that this other holiday is coming in the sequence on the calendar? The great rabbinic commentator Abraham Ibn Ezra of 12th century Muslim Spain, he interpreted it as distinguishing it from Rosh Hashanah because Rosh Hashanah is so joyful and merry, and it's a way of saying, yet we have this holiday that has a bit of a different cast with gravitas, and we have to make sure that we feel that gravitas. It's a distinction. So I think that that's very much what we see in the poetic imagery and also in the melody, that were we to slip into routine or autopilot or fogging out or self-centeredness or delusion of, oh, well, how bad could it have been? And again, we've all been there. There's no other kind of person, right? You can always count on the language of the Torah to wake us up in ways that help us be the best people we can be. Or similarly, in the case of this very day, right, in the bone of this day, the great rabbinic commentator Rabbi of the 13th century Galilee, he interpreted this very day as meaning that in ancient Jerusalem, our ancestors had animal sacrifices and other kinds of rituals in the temple. The priests had certain rituals of cleansing and garments and all sorts of things. But since the Roman Empire destroyed the temple in Jerusalem in 70 CE, the interpretation that Ramban is giving is it's this very day that is holy. Not just one action that was done in the temple that the Romans destroyed that can't be done anymore, but it's this day. It's the day of Yom Kippur. The Roman Empire can't destroy a day. They can knock down a building, but they can't destroy a day when we put our minds to atonement and repentance. It's the time, it's the day that we spend contemplating how we can be better people. That's what's really holy. And nothing can destroy that day, no empire, as long as we are mindful of that day. The only thing that could make that day wither away is if we get apathetic about it. But if we put our hearts into it, no one can take that away from us. And so it's a Sabbath of Sabbath. It's a Shabbat, Shabbaton, in the sense that, well, I'll tell you how we see this interpreted by Professor Baruch Schwartz of Hebrew University in the current day, writing in the Jewish Study Bible. He says the phrase Shabbat, Shabbaton is highlighting the strict and total abstention from labor. In other words, apology and forgiveness is not the kind of thing you do while you're on your to-do list or Candy Crush on your phone under the table. You know, we're putting all of our work aside so we can be present, so we can immerse, so we can focus. That's how we apologize and forgive. That's how we really tap into the best people we can be. So, why would we read this now? Well, I think that in the imagery of the text, we saw one set of insights, and in the melody, we saw another. But the very fact that we read this text at this exact moment, now, that's not necessarily something that Moses could have predicted, right? The order of the reading of the Parshas was done centuries later by the great rabbis of Jewish tradition. So we're now going to look at the text not in the sense of what do the literal images really show us, but we're going to say the very fact that Jewish tradition over the centuries has set up this idea that we get to this part in the story at this moment. Why is that important? What does that mean? I think because it turns out it's helpful to have these prompts not just once a year, not just when the actual holiday of Yom Kippur comes around. It's helpful to have other reminders throughout the year to wake us up again, to prompt us again, to guide us again to be the best people we can be. It's kind of a little mini Yom Kippur itself, just to read these verses. You know, if Yom Kippur as an all-day immersion in atonement is the equivalent of that all-night conversation with a loved one that changes everything, this act of just reading these verses in the Torah is more like the small little moment when you see the look on someone's face and all of a sudden you realize that you got to say something to them and that you got to make a change. Or maybe they see the look on your face and they apologize and you have the chance to forgive them. It's a little mini Yom Kippur right there. And it's also a reminder that we don't have to wait for Yom Kippur. We don't have to wait for one particular day to come around. That the chance to be the best people we can be, the chance to love each other that much better, is always right here waiting for us. Shabbat Shalom.